Walter Elias Disney, December 5th, 1901 to December 15th, 1966, was a shy, self-deprecating, and insecure man in private, but affected a warm and outgoing public persona. He was the son of an Irish-descended Canadian father, Elias, and a German-English mother, Flora. Walt was born in Chicago's Hermosa neighborhood, but in 1906, when Disney was 4 years old, the family moved to a farm in Merceline, Missouri, where his Uncle Robert owned land. Here young Walt began to display and develop talent and interest in art. In 1911, when Walt was 10, the family, including Walt's 3 older brothers and younger sister, moved to Kansas City, Missouri. Here, Disney poorly attended Benton Grammar School because he worked a rigorous paper route delivering the morning edition of the Kansas City Times newspaper and the evening edition of the Kansas City Star for more than 6 years. By age 15, Walt had dropped out of school to get a job selling candy and magazines on the train that ran from Kansas City to Chicago. In 1917, Elias bought stock in a Chicago jelly producer, the Ozell Company, and moved back to Chicago with his family. In mid-1918, Disney attempted to join the United States Army to fight against the Germans in World War I, but he was rejected for being too young. After forging the year on his birth certificate, he joined the Red Cross in September 1918 as an ambulance driver. He was shipped to France, but arrived in November, after the armistice. Disney returned to Kansas City in October 1919, and it was then and there he met Frank Sherman Dad Land, June 21st, 1890, until November 8th, 1959. On June 29th, 1912, Frank S. Land had become a member of Ivanhoe Lodge No. 446 in Kansas City, and in January 1919, he met Louis G. Lower, a 16-year-old boy whom, in 1918, had lost his father, Elmer E. Lower, a member of Ivanhoe Lodge. On February 19, 1919, Louis Lower, Frank Dad Land, and 8 of Louis's neighborhood friends, including Ralph Sewell, Elmer Dorsey, Edmund Marshall, Jerome Jacobson, William Steinhilber, Ivan Bentley, Gorman McBride, and Clyde Stream, met inside the Ivanhoe Lodge to found a boys' club, and on March 24th, they and 11 other boys from their high school constituted the Order of Demolay that has, since then, become Demolay International, a tax-exempt, international, fraternal organization for young men ages 12 to 21. By the end of the year, the club had already grown enough for the founding members to consider instituting a 75-member maximum, but ultimately Dad Land advised against it. In March of the following year, 1920, Walt Disney, age 19, became the 107th member of the founding Mother Chapter of the Order of D. Molay. January of that year, 1920, Disney had been laid off from his position as apprentice artist at the Pesman Rubin Commercial Art Studio, where he had worked the preceding winter, and, following co-founding a short-lived commercial artist's endeavor with Ub Iwerks, he and his business partner began working for the Kansas City Film Ad Company, run by A.V. Cogger, producing commercials using cutout animation. Unable to convince his boss to convert their cutout animation studio to cell animation, Disney founded his own animation studio, Newman's Laugh-O-Grams. Disney overinvested the company by producing a 12.5-minute, one-reel film called Alice's Wonderland, based on Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, which combined live action and animation. Kansas City child actress Virginia Davis, December 31st, 1918, until August 15th, 2009, was cast as Alice. In 1923, Laugh-O-Gram Studio went bankrupt, and that July, Disney moved to Hollywood to find work as a live-action film director. By October, when he was still only 19 years old, Walt Disney signed a contract with New York film distributor Margaret J. Winkler to replace her prior run of Felix the Cat cartoons with 6 episodes of Disney's Alice comedies. Disney and his brother Roy formed the Disney Brothers Studio, which later became the Walt Disney Company, to produce the films. They persuaded Davis and her family to relocate to Hollywood to continue production, with Davis on contract at $100 a month. In July 1924, Disney also hired Iwerks, persuading him to move to Hollywood from Kansas City as well. Werner Magnus Maximilian Freiherr von Braun, March 23, 1912, till June 16, 1977, was a German-born professor of rocket science under the Nazi Third Reich and, later, worked for NASA in the USA to design and engineer the Saturn V rocket that propelled America's Apollo missions to the moon. Although he would later describe his thoughts on Hitler at the time as being only a pompous fool with a Charlie Chaplin mustache, on November 12, 1937, von Braun, aged 25 years, applied for official membership to the NSDAP and was issued membership number 5,738,692. In a signed affidavit for the U.S. Army, von Braun falsified claims about the date of and reason for his joining the Nazi Party, as well as made other misleading statements about his role in the Nazi SS and his awareness of the ongoing Holocaust. In this document, for example, von Braun claimed, "My membership in the party did not involve any political activity," and, "If I wanted to continue our mutual work, I had no alternative but to join the SS." Von Braun was personally promoted by Heinrich Himmler, Reichsfuhrer of the Schutzstaffel SS, 3 times raising him to the rank of SS Sturmbannführer, equivalent to a major. In addition, von Braun's doctoral thesis about combustion tests, for which he was awarded a doctorate in physics, aerospace engineering, on July 27, 1934, from the University of Berlin, was only the public part of his work. His real, complete thesis, called Construction, Theoretical, and Experimental Solution to the Problem of the Liquid Propellant Rocket, dated April 16, 1934, was kept classified by the German Army because the Treaty of Versailles, then yet in force, did not include rocketry in its list of weapons Germany was forbidden to develop. As he put it himself in a 1952 memoir article, von Braun fared relatively well under totalitarianism, and with only military development of rocketry allowed under the Third Reich, a larger facility was erected at the village of Peenemünde in northern Germany on the Baltic Sea, with von Braun as technical director. In collaboration with the Luftwaffe, the Peenemünde Group developed liquid fuel rocket engines for aircraft and jet-assisted takeoffs, although ultimately the Nazis' RLM, Ministry of Aviation, chose to use Helmuth Walter's designs for engines fueled by hydrogen peroxide and calcium permanganate as a catalyst, rather than von Braun's designs for engines powered by alcohol and liquid oxygen. At Peenemünde, they also developed the long-range A4, later renamed V2, ballistic missile and the supersonic Wasserfall anti-aircraft missile by reverse engineering the rocketry designs of American physicist Robert H. Goddard from various published scientific journals, but without having any of his patented schematics themselves. Following von Braun's July 7, 1943, presentation of a color movie showing a V2 taking off, Hitler was so enthusiastic that he personally made von Braun a professor at just 31 years of age. Despite the Allies dropping 1,800 tons of explosives from 596 aircraft over the nights of August 17th and 18th, 1943, onto the Peenemünde camp, killing von Braun's engine designer, Walter Thiel, and chief engineer, Walther. The first combat V2 rocket was launched toward England on September 7, 1944, only 21 months after the project had been officially commissioned. Von Braun's sentiments about the Blitzkrieg offensive were mixed, with history recalling him saying both that, "I have very deep and sincere regret for the victims of the V2 rockets, but there were victims on both sides. A war is a war, and when my country is at war, my duty is to help win that war," as well as saying, "The rocket worked perfectly, except for landing on the wrong planet." Satirist Mort Sahl has been credited with mocking von Braun by saying, "I aim at the stars, but sometimes I hit London." By this point, it does appear von Braun may have become somewhat disenchanted with National Socialism, following his being seized on March 14th and 15th, 1944, taken to a Gestapo cell in Stettin, Poland, and detained for 2 weeks without being told the charges against him. Von Braun had been reported for having a defeatist attitude and had been charged by Himmler as a communist sympathizer that had attempted to sabotage the V2 program. Despite this, his expertise was integral, and so von Braun was released, and Hitler personally decreed him protected from all persecution as long as he is indispensable, difficult though the general consequences arising from the situation. With Soviet forces closing in on their position, von Braun led his team of rocket scientists across the Alps, south through the Tyrolean passes into Austria, and on May 2nd and 3rd, 1945, von Braun and his crew surrendered to American troops from the 44th Infantry Division of the U.S. Army National Guard. After the surrender, Werner spoke to the press. "We knew that we had created a new means of warfare, and the question as to what nation, to what victorious nation, we were willing to entrust this brainchild of ours, was a moral decision more than anything else. We wanted to see the world spared another conflict such as Germany had just been through, and we felt that only by surrendering such a weapon to people who were guided by the Bible could such an assurance to the world be best secured." Von Braun was briefly detained at the Dust Bin interrogation center at Kronsberg Castle, where the elite of the Third Reich's economy, science, and technology were debriefed by U.S. and British intelligence officials. But from there he was rapidly recruited to the U.S. under a program called Operation Overcast, subsequently known as Operation Paperclip. On June 20th, 1945, the U.S. Secretary of State approved the transfer of von Braun and his specialists to America, and the first 7 technicians arrived in the United States at Newcastle Army Airfield, just south of Wilmington, Delaware, on September 20th, 1945. Over the winter of 1945, von Braun and his 127 remaining Peenemünde staff were transferred to Fort Bliss, an Army installation just north of El Paso, Texas. Von Braun later wrote he had difficulty developing any genuine emotional attachment to his new surroundings, and his chief design engineer, Walther Riedel, became the subject of a December 1946 article entitled "German Scientist Says American Cooking Tasteless, Dislikes Rubberized Chicken." Although his loyal Germans still addressed von Braun as Herr Professor, he was now subordinate to pimply 26-year-old Jim Hamill, an American major who only possessed an undergraduate degree in engineering. During this period of time, while their requests to improve their living conditions, such as laying linoleum over their cracked wood flooring, were rejected, and every proposal for new rocket ideas was dismissed, von Braun and his colleagues began to refer to themselves as POPs, prisoners of peace. At the outbreak of the Korean War in 1950, von Braun and his team were transferred to Huntsville, Alabama, where he would reside until 1970. The May 14th, 1950 headline of the Huntsville Times reading, Dr. von Braun says rocket flights possible to moon, encouraged von Braun's first publishing his concept of a manned space station in a series of Collier's Weekly magazine articles titled Man Will Conquer Space Soon, illustrated by Chesley Bonestell. Von Braun proposed a toroidal, rotating, wheel-shaped space station supporting both manned and unmanned expeditions to establish a permanent lunar base in the Sinus Roris region of Earth's moon. The Mars Project, a non-fiction scientific book written in German and translated into English by Henry J. White for the University of Illinois Press in 1953, had originally been penned by von Braun in 1948, and he had coupled it with a science fiction novel set in the year 1980, titled Project Mars, A Technical Tale, that was rejected by no fewer than 18 publishers, but finally published posthumously in 2006. In the hope that its involvement would bring about greater public interest in the future of the space program, von Braun also began working with Walt Disney and the Disney Studios as a technical director, initially for 3 television films about space exploration. Man in Space is an episode of the American television series Disneyland, which originally aired on March 9, 1955, and was watched by about 40 million people. The next episodes in this series were Man and the Moon and Mars and Beyond, airing in Seasons 2 on December 28, 1955, and 4 on December 4, 1957, respectively. Contemporarily, from 1952 until 1956, von Braun led the Army's rocket development team at Redstone Arsenal, resulting in the Redstone rocket, which was used for the first live nuclear ballistic missile tests conducted by the United States. Von Braun personally witnessed its historic christening, launch, and detonation. For the 12 years from 1945 to 1957, Sergei Korolev and his team of scientists and engineers in the Soviet Union had been making major advances in spaceflight, and on October 4, 1957, the Soviets launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial Earth satellite, into an elliptical low Earth orbit for 3 weeks before its battery died, then silently for 2 more months before falling back into the atmosphere. In response to this, as director of the Development Operations Division of the Army Ballistic Missile Agency, von Braun and his team developed the Jupiter-C rocket and successfully launched the West's first satellite, Explorer 1, on January 31, 1958. This event marked the birth of America's space program. NASA was established by law on July 29, 1958. 1 day later, the 50th Redstone rocket was successfully launched from Johnston Atoll in the South Pacific as part of Operation Hardtack 1. 2 years later, NASA opened the Marshall Space Flight Center at Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, and the Army Ballistic Missile Agency, ABMA, development team led by von Braun was transferred to NASA. Von Braun became the center's first director on July 1st, 1960, and held the position until January 27th, 1970. The Walt Disney Company, commonly known as Disney, is an American, diversified multinational mass media and entertainment conglomerate headquartered at the Walt Disney Studios in Burbank, California. Disney was originally founded on October 16, 1923, by brothers Walt and Roy O. Disney as the Disney Brothers Cartoon Studio. It also operated under the names the Walt Disney Studio and Walt Disney Productions before officially announcing it was changing its name to the Walt Disney Company in 1986. The company established itself as a leader in the American animation industry before diversifying into live-action film production, television, and theme parks. Since the 1980s, Disney has created and acquired corporate divisions in order to market more mature content than is typically associated with its flagship family-oriented brands. The company is known for its film studio division, Walt Disney Studios, which includes Walt Disney Pictures, Walt Disney Animation Studios, Pixar, Marvel Studios, Lucasfilm, 20th Century Fox, Fox Searchlight Pictures, and Blue Sky Studios. Disney's other main divisions are Disney Media Networks, Disney Parks, Experiences and Products, and Walt Disney Direct-to-Consumer and International. Disney also owns and operates the ABC Broadcast Network, cable television networks such as Disney Channel, ESPN, Freeform, FX, National Geographic Network, and A&E networks, publishing, merchandising, music, and theater divisions, and Walt Disney Parks and Resorts, a group of 14 theme parks around the world. Walt Disney stepped down as chairman in 1960 to focus more on the creative aspects of the company, becoming the executive in charge of all production. After a 4-year vacancy, Roy O. Disney became chairman. On December 15, 1966, Walt Disney died of complications relating to lung cancer, and Roy Disney took over as official chairman, CEO, and president of the company. One of his first acts was to rename Disney World as Walt Disney World in honor of his brother and his vision. On October 1st, 1971, Walt Disney World opened to the public, with Roy Disney dedicating the facility in person later that month. On December 20th, 1971, Roy Disney died of a stroke. He left the company under control of Don Tatum, Card Walker, and Walt's son-in-law, Ron Miller, each trained by Walt and Roy. With the Sid Bass family purchase of 18.7% of Disney in 1984, Bass and his board brought in Michael Eisner, born March 7, 1942, from Paramount as CEO, and Frank Wells from Warner Brothers as president. Some 20 years later, on March 3, 2004, at Disney's annual shareholders meeting, 45% of Disney's shareholders, predominantly rallied by former board members Stanley Gold and Director Emeritus Roy E. Disney, withheld their proxies to re-elect Eisner to the board. On March 13, 2005, Robert A. Iger, born February 10, 1951, was announced Eisner's successor as CEO. At the time of his death from stomach cancer on December 16, 2009, Roy E. Disney owned roughly 1% of Disney, which amounted to 16 million shares. He was the last member of the Disney family to be actively involved in the company. Beginning with Who Framed Roger Rabbit in 1988, Disney's flagship animation studio enjoyed a series of commercial and critical successes with such films as The Little Mermaid, 1989, Beauty and the Beast, 1991, Aladdin, 1992, and The Lion King, 1994. In addition, the company successfully entered the field of television animation with a number of lavishly budgeted and acclaimed series such as Adventures of the Gummy Bears, DuckTales, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, Darkwing Duck, Tailspin, and Gargoyles.
Anna. 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 Anna, look at me. Riley thinks you've absolutely lost your mind.
Huh?
Riley thinks you've lost your mind.
I didn't lose my mind.
She thinks you have.
I didn't.
Is this a mushroom trip?
Huh?
Is this a mushroom trip?
Huh?
Is this a mushroom trip?
What do you mean?
I'm kidding.
What does that mean?
I'm kidding.
Vicki Lynn Hogan, November 28, 1967, until February 8, 2007, was born in Houston, Texas, to parents who married on February 22, 1967, and divorced on November 4, 1969. Vicki Lynn was raised by her mother and an aunt and grew up with 5 half-siblings: Donna Hogan, David Tacker Jr., Donnie Hogan, Amy Hogan, and Donald Hart. When Vicki failed her freshman year of high school, she opted to drop out during her sophomore year at age 14 in 1982. While working at Jim's Crispy Fried Chicken in Mexia, Vicki met Billy Wayne Smith, a cook at the restaurant, and the couple married on April 4th, 1985, when she was 17. She gave birth to their son, Daniel Wayne Smith, on January 22nd, 1986. She appeared on the cover of the March 1992 issue of Playboy magazine as Vicki Smith, and again as the Playboy Playmate of the Month in a pictorial shot by Stephen Wada for the May 1992 issue. Smith and her husband divorced on February 3, 1993, in Houston. While performing in October 1991 at a Houston strip club, Smith had met 86-year-old petroleum tycoon billionaire J. Howard Marshall. During their 2-year affair, Marshall reportedly lavished expensive gifts on Smith and asked her to marry him several times. On June 27, 1994, Smith and Marshall were married in Houston, resulting in speculation that she married him for his money. Smith reportedly never lived with Marshall, never had sex with him, and never kissed him on the mouth more than 10 times. She maintained that she loved Marshall and that age did not matter to her. On August 4, 1995, 13 months after his marriage to Smith, Marshall died in Houston at the age of 90. Smith's 20-year-old son from her first marriage, Daniel Smith, died on September 10, 2006, in his mother's hospital room while visiting her and her newborn daughter, Daniel Lynn Hope Marshall Stern, born September 7, 2006. Smith had been given a prescription for methadone under a false name while she was in her 8th month of pregnancy. Smith hired forensic pathologist Cyril Wecht to perform a second autopsy on her son, and Wecht announced on Larry King Live that the autopsy he performed showed that Daniel Smith died from a lethal combination of antidepressants, Zoloft, Lexapro, and the painkiller methadone. Psychiatrist Dr. Natalie Mullen said she met Smith in April 2006 in Cedars Sinai Medical Center and that Smith had borderline personality disorder. On February 8, 2007, Smith was found dead in room 607 at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood, Florida. Smith died of combined drug intoxication with the sleeping medication chloral hydrate as the major component. No illegal drugs were found in her system. The official report states that her death was not considered to be due to homicide, suicide, or natural causes. Smith's death was ultimately ruled an accidental drug overdose of the sedative chloral hydrate that became increasingly lethal when combined with other prescription drugs in her system, specifically 4 different benzodiazepines: Klonopin, clonazepam, Ativan, lorazepam, Serax, oxazepam, and Valium, diazepam. Furthermore, she had taken Benadryl, diphenhydramine, and Topamax, topiramate, both of which block sodium channels, likely intensifying the sedative effects of the chloral hydrate and benzodiazepines. Despite rumors of methadone use due to its involvement in the death of Smith's son, Broward County medical examiner and forensic pathologist Joshua Perper only found methadone in Smith's bile, indicating it was probably ingested 2 to 3 days prior to her death and therefore was not a contributing factor. The autopsy report indicates that abscesses on her buttocks, presumably from prior injections of vitamin B12 in the form of cyanocobalamin, as well as human growth hormone and viral enteritis, were contributory causes of death. It was reported that 8 of the 11 drugs in Smith's system, including the chloral hydrate, were prescribed to Howard Kevin Stern, born November 29, 1968, who was Smith's domestic partner, attorney, and agent, and not to Smith herself. Additionally, 2 of the prescriptions were written for Alex Katz, and 1 was written for Smith's friend and psychiatrist, Dr. Christine Elaine Aroshevich. All 11 prescriptions were written by Dr. Aroshevich. Britney Jean Spears, born December 2, 1981, is an American singer, songwriter, dancer, and actress. Born in Macomb, Mississippi, and raised in Kentwood, Louisiana, she appeared in stage productions and television series before signing with Jive Records in 1997. Spears' first 2 studio albums, Baby One More Time, 1999, and Oops, I Did It Again, 2000, were global successes and made her the best-selling teenage artist of all time. Referred to as the Princess of Pop, Spears is regarded as a pop icon and is credited with influencing the revival of teen pop during the late 1990s and early 2000s. Spears adopted more mature and provocative themes for her next 2 studio albums, Britney, 2001, and In the Zone, 2003, and made her feature film debut in a starring role in Crossroads, 2002. Following a series of heavily publicized personal struggles and erratic public behavior, Spears' career was interrupted before the release of her 5th studio album, Blackout, 2007, which is often critically referred to as her best work. Her erratic behavior and hospitalizations led Spears to be placed on a still ongoing conservatorship. She returned to the top of record charts with her 6th and 7th studio albums, Circus, 2008, and Femme Fatale, 2011, respectively. In 2012, Forbes reported that Spears was the highest-paid female musician of the year, with earnings of $58 million, having last topped the list in 2002. In 2019, Spears announced an indefinite career hiatus and was later admitted involuntarily into a mental health facility by her conservator, leading to a court-led investigation into malpractice conducted by Spears' team. Catherine Elizabeth Hudson, born October 25, 1984, known professionally as Katy Perry, is an American singer, songwriter, and television judge. After singing in church during her childhood, she pursued a career in gospel music as a teenager. Perry signed with Red Hill Records and released her debut studio album, Katy Hudson, under her birth name in 2001, which was commercially unsuccessful. She moved to Los Angeles the following year to venture into secular music. After adopting the stage name Katy Perry and being dropped by the Island Def Jam Music Group and Columbia Records, she signed a record contract with Capitol Records in April 2007. Perry rose to fame in 2008 with the release of her second album, a pop rock record titled One of the Boys, and its singles I Kissed a Girl and Hot and Cold. The former track also sparked controversy for its sapphic themes. Her estimated net worth as of 2016 is $125 million. She is one of the best-selling music artists of all time, having sold more than 100 million records globally throughout her career. Destiny Hope Miley Cyrus, born November 23, 1992, is an American singer, songwriter, and actress. Cyrus's godmother is entertainer Dolly Parton. After playing minor roles in the television series Doc and the film Big Fish as a child, she became a teen idol in 2006, starring in the Disney Channel television series Hannah Montana as the character Miley Stewart. Her father, musician Billy Ray Cyrus, also starred in the series, which aired for 4 seasons until 2011. Her image has been the subject of significant media commentary and public controversy, shifting from wholesomeness to highly sexual behavior in the 2010s. Cyrus is an outspoken animal rights advocate and adopted a vegan lifestyle in 2014. Destiny Hope Cyrus was born November 23, 1992, in Franklin, Tennessee, to Letitia Tish Jean Finley and singer Billy Ray Cyrus. Against the advice of her father's record company, Cyrus's parents secretly married on December 28, 1993, a year after her birth. Cyrus was born with supraventricular tachycardia, a condition causing an abnormal resting heart rate. Her birth name, Destiny Hope, expressed her parents' belief that she would accomplish great things. Her parents nicknamed her Smiley, which they later shortened to Miley, because she often smiled as an infant. In 2008, she changed her name to Miley Ray Cyrus. Her middle name honors her grandfather, Democratic politician Ronald Ray Cyrus, from Kentucky. Raised a Christian, she was baptized in a Southern Baptist church before moving to Hollywood in 2005. She attended church regularly growing up and wore a purity ring. Cyrus auditioned for the Disney Channel television series Hannah Montana when she was 11 years old. The series premiered in March 2006 to the largest audience for a Disney Channel program and quickly ranked among the highest-rated series on basic cable. The success of the series led to Cyrus being labeled a teen idol. In April 2008, several images of Cyrus in her underwear and swimsuit were leaked by a teenage hacker who accessed her Gmail account. Further controversy arose when it was reported that Cyrus, then 15, had posed topless during a photo shoot with Annie Leibovitz for Vanity Fair. On December 7, 2009, Cyrus performed for Queen Elizabeth II and other members of the British royal family at the Royal Variety Performance in Blackpool, Lancashire. In August 2012, Cyrus generated considerable media attention after cutting her traditionally long, brown hair in favor of a blonde pixie cut. In 2013, she provided guest vocals on the Lil Twist song, Twerk, which also featured vocals by Justin Bieber. The song went unreleased for unknown reasons, though it was leaked online. Cyrus performed with Robin Thicke at the 2013 MTV Video Music Awards, a performance that resulted in widespread media attention and public scrutiny. Monarch programming is allegedly a mind control technique comprising elements of satanic ritual abuse, SRA, and multiple personality disorder, MPD. It utilizes a combination of psychology, neuroscience, and occult rituals to create within the slaves an alter personality that can be triggered and programmed by the handlers. Monarch slaves are used by several organizations connected with the world elite in fields such as the military, sex slavery, and the entertainment industry. Following the Rockefeller Commission of 1975, it was claimed that the CIA stopped human mind control experimentation, but some whistleblowers have come forward stating that the project simply went underground and Monarch programming has become the classified successor of MK Ultra. Monarch programmers cause intense trauma to subjects through the use of electroshock, torture, abuse, and mind games in order to force them to dissociate from reality, a natural response in some people when they are faced with unbearable pain. The subject's ability to dissociate is a major requirement, and it is, apparently, most readily found in children that come from families with multiple generations of abuse. Mental dissociation enables the handlers to create walled-off personas in the subject's psyche, which can then be programmed and triggered at will. Monarch slaves are mainly used by organizations to carry out operations using patsies trained to perform specific tasks, who do not question orders, who do not remember their actions, and, if discovered, who automatically commit suicide. About 75% are female, since they possess a higher tolerance for pain and tend to disassociate more easily than males. Disassociation is thus achieved by traumatizing the subject, using systematic abuse, and using terrifying occult rituals. Once a split in the core personality occurs, an internal world can be created, and alter personas can be programmed using tools such as music, movies, especially Disney productions, and fairy tales. Some of the movies used in Monarch programming include The Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland, Pinocchio, and Sleeping Beauty.